Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about BrainMaze, and I'm going to talk about our API, which we usually don't talk too much. We're an enterprise product, so we usually talk to non-technical people in companies to do the sales. So this will be a fun change of pace for us. Before we get into that, I'll talk a little bit about myself. So I'm the founder and CEO of Brainbase. Brainbase is a YCW24 company. We started it in January 2024, so this time last year. Before that, I was a PhD student at Harvard working on machine learning and computer vision, which I've dropped out of to start Brainbase. And Brainbase actually, as I'll talk more, depends and comes from sort of my research that I've done during my PhD. But yeah, we can get started with that. And keep in mind, my presentation will most likely be a little shorter. Feel free to come in with questions. Feel free to come in during the presentation. If it's a short question, I'll answer it. If not, I'll answer it at the end. But please feel free to ask questions. All right. So I don't know how many of you were paying attention to the CES 2025, but one of the quotes that stood out was Jensen's quote that the IT department of every company is essentially going to be the HR department AI agent. So we keep hearing about this AI agent situation. So this was a nice kind of refreshing take on that. And what that means for every company is that the CIO, the chief IT officer, is going to be the most important role in the company by the end of 2025. So this is also confirmed by sort of Sam Altman, who is saying, so obviously, as everyone knows, is the CEO of OpenAI, has said that, AI agents finally in this year that has been talked a lot is going to materialize and have actual productivity benefits that are going to be seen in enterprises. So as I was making the slide, we saw that, Operator from OpenAI has got announced. So, they're kind of talking the talk and walking the walk, which is good to see. So if you guys haven't played around with it, play around with it. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, so the idea is AI agents will be common as our workmates by 2026. So if you look at kind of what the situation is in a company today, what happens is all these departments go to HR or go to whoever the people and kind of the sourcing part of the company is. And whenever they need some workforce, they go ahead and ask them, can I get some SDRs? Can I get some, devs? Can I get this people? Can I get this people? This is what I need to handle our workload. So we are seeing very rapidly that this is turning into IT essentially being where this is gatekept and this is supplied. So this is essentially where we come in. So BrainMaze at its core is a first of its kind EAP, which is a term that we use to denote an enterprise agent platform. What that means is we go into companies and we set up a central platform for them to be able to create agents, numerous agents for every department. So they can create agents from sales to marketing to customer support to ops. So whatever you need. One thing we don't do currently is devs, but anything other than that, we will most likely have a template and a worker that has been created on us. So this is kind of what it looks like at its core. So our system creates an agent. So there are requests from sales, HR, ops, wherever they come. This turns into an agent, which then gets customized with your connections, your third-party apps, and also gets to connect to your internal APIs. This is then deployed to any channel that you might think. So kind of echoing what Emily said, the core idea that we're seeing going into 2025 is that we want the same agent available on any channel that you might interact with or your customers might interact with it. So you create your agent from your templates, customize your agent by connecting it, and then you deploy that same agent to any channel. So this is the idea. And so far, we've seen that BrainMaze has allowed them to go from idea to production 83% faster and has saved the equivalent of $97 million in workforce costs in 2024 and 2025. So, but today, as a dev audience, I'll kind of stop there and talk about something a little bit more interesting, which is of all this talk about agents, kind of what is it that makes an agent? What do we call an agent? What is the constituents of it? So we think about this a lot in BrainMaze, and we think of it in the form of the BrainMaze diamond, which is we call it. But it's kind of something that has 4 components. These 4 components are a database, documents, integrations, and intelligence. So we have since saw that any agent that is being used in production, any agent that's being used right now, essentially boils down to these four components. So to go through these one by one, essentially an agent needs a database, a structured database where it can write data to. It needs documents, either for context or to be able to read from it. So this is the part where you do RAG, this is the part where you vectorize. It needs integrations. So it needs some ability to interact with the tools that it needs. Because, if you're going to be booking tickets, you need Google, you need, some form of application that you interface with. Or if you're in an enterprise setting, you need some like Salesforce or Workday that your agent is actually able to interact with. And finally, at the end of the day, we obviously need intelligence, which is coming from the LLM. So what we're seeing a lot right now out in the wild is that this is kind of all four of these components separately are sort of figured out. So your database, your documents, your integrations, your intelligence, there's not much play around any of these components singularly. So OpenAI supplies the intelligence, database and unstructured database are pretty common. And then we just have the integrations that we build and every company builds. So the more interesting question that we find when you try to get these in production is how do you actually connect these four components together for them to work? So you have the system, you have all these four components, and you put them in a bag, but there needs to be something. The thing that is missing is something that makes all four of these work. And a lot of the time we see that people think the LLM itself is this binding tissue, but the moment you try to put that in production, the moment you try to put just an LLM into production with all these four components, you see that it fails pretty miserably. So I'm sure you've seen examples of um, production and even deployment agents that kind of sell people cars for $1 or even worse. So the main thing that this is coming from, so the main reason for this in terms of a dev experience is if you've ever tried to create an agent using OpenAI LLM or any other LLM, this is sort of the problem you run into in doing this. So assume that you're trying to create an agent with OpenAI API. So this is kind of the standard Python SDK. Then let's try to add streaming to this. So a couple more lines. And then let's make it a conversation so that it can talk to people. So let's give it the ability to search Google now. So this is with one tool, we've gone into such a complex implementation of the system that needs to be done by every person deploying an LLM. So, and the worst part is we haven't actually even deployed this yet to any kind of production environment, any kind of server. And this is a very simplified version of what happens in a production setting where you need to get something out that is going to actually take customer calls. It's going to be able to take, requests from people, requests from your internal team. So what we've figured out here, what we've realized is that we need actually a way of creating AI agents that is stateful. So meaning AI agents are able to refer to previous runs that they have done. So this can be in the same run, in the same session. If they've Googled some research and actually have found some things and now they have to write about them, they need to have a direct way of accessing that information. They need to be serverless so that you can deploy them as easily as today you're able to deploy a website or something like a Lambda on AWS if you're familiar with those. And finally, the most important part of this is that they need to be reliable. So this is something that kind of is swept under the rug until you try to get something in production. But a lot of the time when you're working in an enterprise setting, when you're dealing with customers, unlike what you might want to do on ChatGPT and all the cool demos, you actually want your systems to be pretty deterministic. And that kind of echoes the human experience. So if you have a customer-facing agent, a human agent in a company, they are usually trained to be standard and to kind of work in a deterministic manner. And that is something that is very hard to bring to AI when you allow the AI to make decisions at every step. If you allow the AI to pick every time if it's going to Google or if it's going to send an email, then we see that it ends up sort of failing a lot of the time. So one thing that we want to put in here that doesn't just make for good demos, but actually good production agents is that, it needs to be deterministic in a way. So the core of our product, what this brings us to is the language that we've created to do this. So this is the part that's coming from my PhD research. And what we've seen is deploying an agent, deploying an AI system into production, there needs to be a way where an LLM can take actions natively, and these agents can be provisioned in a systematic way. So to do that, we've developed what we call the base language, which we call the assembly language of AI agents. So this is a first version of a class of languages we call the AIML, the Agentic Instruction Markdown Language. And I can show you here what that looks like. So the code that we've had before, you can do that in these 5 lines. So this you can think of as what replaces the text prompt that goes into your agent. So instead of putting a text prompt into your agent and then having to create all the peripherals outside of that, now you're able to call this agent with just these 5 lines that has the Google search functionality, has the functionality of system prompting, has the functionality of conversation, and this is what gets deployed to the AI agent. And the way you deploy it is also very, very easy. So now you just deploy it with these 4 lines. And the really nice part is you can actually go ahead and deploy this to a lot of places with just another line. So this code here will go ahead and deploy this over voice, over Slack, over WhatsApp, over Zoom, over Teams, wherever we support, and we increase support for that all the time. So here, for the demo, let's see one of these agents in production. So I'll go ahead and call one of our numbers that has one of the agents that have been created with this system. And hopefully you'll be able to hear it.
Thank you for calling Long Hyundai. My name is Alex. Please note this call is being recorded to ensure you are having an excellent customer experience. Are you calling to schedule a service appointment or check the status of your vehicle?
Hey, Alex, I have a check engine light on. Is there anything you can help with that?
Absolutely, I can help with that. Just to confirm, your phone number is 617-901-1508 and your name is Gokhan Egri, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Great. I see you. The 2015 Toyota Tacoma. Is this the vehicle you'd like to schedule the engine diagnosis for?
Yes, for the Toyota Tacoma, correct.
Perfect. For the engine diagnosis, we recommend dropping off your vehicle for the day. Would you like to book an appointment for this?
Yes, please. Can I book something 3 Fridays from now? Alex?
I found some available slots for 3 Fridays from now. The earliest available time is 8 a.m. on January 31st. Would you like to book that time?
No. Is there anything later in that day?
Sure thing. On January 31st, I have a slot at 11:15 a.m. Does that work for you?
Yeah, but I don't have I don't have anyone to pick me up. Is there any chance to get a loaner?
We don't offer loaners, but we can provide a shuttle service through Uber within 20 miles of the dealership. Would you like to use that option?
Yeah, Uber sounds great.
Awesome. Let's confirm the details. Appointment for an engine diagnosis on your 2015 Toyota Tacoma scheduled for January 31st at 11:15 a.m. transportation via Uber. Does everything look good?
Yeah, everything looks great. Let's book it.
Please wait a few seconds while I book your appointment for January 31st at 11:15 a.m.
Can you also tell me the address of the dealership so that I know that I'm dropping it off at the correct place?
Your appointment is all set for January 31st at 11:15 a.m. The dealership's address is 6035 International Drive, Chattanooga, Tennessee, 37421. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask.
Thanks, Alex. Have a great day. So this is a system that took about 30 to 40 lines of base code and has been deployed to voice chat as well as web chat for the Hyundai dealership that's taking hundreds of actual customer calls every day, which is one of our many, many dealerships that is actually using this in production. So one of these days when you call an airline or a dealership or a hospital, you'll most likely be talking to one of our systems, and hopefully you enjoy it. So with that, I'll kind of leave some time for questions, but currently our API is on waitlist, and you're able to go ahead and request access to it and tell us kind of what you'd like to build with it and what you'd like to see next. But yeah, with that, I'd love to answer some questions. Basically, what happens, great question. So in that code, we made the system be able to connect to the internal APIs of the dealership. So in the call that we just made, essentially there was a lot of parts of it that were kind of moving together. So the first part was, if you kind of caught it, it was able to get my information from my number based on their internal API. So it was able to do that in conjunction with, talking to me in the background. So that's something that the language allows. And then when I asked it to book an appointment, when it got the availabilities for the days, those were all calls that it's making with the correct parameters and the correct way of calling to their internal APIs. That's the nice thing about kind of doing it in the way of the base language rather than in an OpenAI API. So in the OpenAI API or any LLM API, what you get to do is you essentially get to just put a system prompt in, hoping that the system will follow it. So you can, when it's a detailed long workflow, you put a lot of information that then the agent does not follow reliably. Here, that's the deterministic part of the workflow that I was talking about. So here we make it in bits where every time it gets my information, confirms my information, it goes to the next step. And that gives it a lot more reliability to be able to follow that smaller step. So basically anything that's not a system prompt is code based. So there's nothing else that goes into the system other than the base code and the deployment itself. So the idea is that you can make it into something, so you can have the base code configured in a way that fully is on parity with the OpenAI LLM. That would mean you put your entire system prompt in the talk section, and then you just put all of your function calls in the untils, and that kind of is what OpenAI gives you. Or you can nest these loops saying, after you've confirmed, then go into this new section where you have that information that's been confirmed already. So now your system prompt is this different thing, and you're trying to get them to book a call or book an appointment or do something else. So that's something that you determine, which is something that's very good to have if you're a customer, if you're an enterprise, and you want to have full control over the system. So this base language is a markdown language that we built on top of Python. So it's a language that uses very similar to the Python syntax, but it runs on an interpreter that we built that is designed around kind of the base language. So we have a lot of designators like loop untils, whenevers, etc. That we built an interpreter for to kind of interpret into a system. Self-hosted. So basically, when I do work with our run, this is a great question. So when I do this, it's basically just self-hosted. So in this, when I do work with our run without passing anything in, it gets you to a conversation on the terminal. When you feed in a WebSocket or something else in the run function, which in the docs you can see, then you're able to do it on your terminal. But this allows you, you're able to do it on your local server. When you do deploy voice, etc., that's when it goes out to our cloud, our managed deployments, that you can start talking to it over the voice. So you can do this entire development on your local machine. That's one of the nice things about being able to do this deterministic action. So you're able to say, if the person has not confirmed, so in the actual production version, if I didn't confirm, it would transfer me to a live agent, a human agent. So that is the behavior that we want to be deterministic. So if you tell the agent in the system prompt, if they don't confirm, put them to a live agent, 90% of the time it'll follow it. 10% of the time, someone will be able to say there's someone else and kind of continue with the system. So that's the exact behavior you can't have. That's why we have this system in a way where it can use deterministic functions. So you will be able to put an if statement here that says, if this happens, if they don't confirm, put them to a live agent. So that part is as secure as an API call. So here in this call, what it does is it makes an API call by checking my number. So that it didn't. So if you were to call, it wouldn't ask you if you're Gokhan Egri with Toyota Tacoma. That's doing it because I've called this number before and it has saved me in its database with my phone number. So when you call, it would not tell you it would not check if you were Gokhan Egri. It would say, you don't have an account. Would you like to create an account? After that, the next time you call it, it would tell you your name and say, do you confirm? So the security vulnerability there is the exact same amount that you would get from, the risk there is what happens if the API call returns false, which is a risk that's shared by not just AI agents and, all web systems, and it's pretty secure. Yes, that is correct. So that is one of the business lines that we go with. We will be releasing docs. So at the moment, what we do is we will onboard people with the teams that we talk to. So as we were establishing kind of the docs and making it more developer friendly, we've essentially established kind of the walkthroughs and the quick starts and all that. But so far, all of our customers have been people that we've onboarded onto the system and given them the docs privately. So one of the reasons that we have the QR code at the end with the waitlist is that we are at the moment kind of gearing up to opening it to developers who they'll be able to then go ahead. One thing I should probably add is we also have an agency system. So people can apply to us to become agencies that do this AI transformation. And, they are able to put a lot of margin on it. We've had a lot of people make a lot of money off it during 2024. So if that's something anyone's interested in getting these to other companies, feel free to reach out.